For the description paragraph writing assignment, we're going to look at a couple examples of description paragraphs. So if you go down to example description paragraphs, there is a Word document here that you'll be able to view on D2L that shows an example, two examples actually, of description paragraphs, and they have been annotated a bit with underlining to show the topic sentences for each paragraph, if there is one, and highlighting to show different aspects of description. So before we get started here, just want to note that these are professional examples of description used as the dominant mode of writing in a set of paragraphs. And these are writers who make the majority of their money from writing, so that is their job. And they also have the help and support of both a reading community who can help them go through their writing before it gets published, get feedback, and from professional editors. So when I show you professional examples, it's not to say this is the standard that I'm expecting. It's just to show you professionals putting this together using the same modes of writing that students use in academic writing and providing a good example, which is the best kind of writing to look at. It's of course helpful to look at both good and poor writing when you are learning how to write and working on writing skills, but it's better to look at and learn from the good examples so that you can emulate their writing decisions. Alright, so this first set of description paragraphs comes from an essay titled A Fleet of One, which was published in the book Uncommon Carriers by famous descriptive writer John McPhee, and he is normally writing literary nonfiction, and he likes to really zoom in on people, places, things, and ideas and explore them in great detail so that everybody takes away a better understanding of those things. And so in this essay, he is looking at semi-transportation. So people who work in the industry of moving goods around the U.S. via semi to better understand that field and the people that work in it. So there's a little context here for what you're reading. All right, so we'll look at the first paragraph here. I don't know how to pronounce this name. It sounds British. When Ainsworth slides into a truck stop, if there are, say, 210 trucks on the premises, he is wary of 209, not to mention others that follow him in. At a Flying J in Oak Grove, Kentucky, he went completely around the big parking lot looking for the space where he was least likely to get clipped. You're inside the truck stop and you hear your name on the PA, he said. Meet so-and-so at the fuel desk. At the fuel desk is a guy with a sheepish look. Nowadays, they usually don't show up. In Little America, Wyoming, he circled a couple of hundred trucks before parking beside a light pole, so only one truck could get near him. He said, "We're 50% protected, and that's better than 100% vulnerable." He has never been dinged, and nothing has ever been stolen from his truck. Constant vigilance is the price of freedom, he remarked. Patrick Henry. Alright, so looking at this example, we have the topic sentence introducing the person that's being focused on for this paragraph, Ainsworth, and it is the first sentence of the paragraph. Reminder, it does not have to be the first sentence of the paragraph, but that's often where the topic sentence main point can provide the most help to readers. It's essentially saying right away, this is the focus. Everything that comes after this is building on this main point, this idea. What is highlighted in this paragraph here, so parts of sentences and whole sentences, these are aspects of description that the writer is providing about Ainsworth, the way he looks, the way he acts, his beliefs, etc. And you can see that we're starting to get a very in-depth impression of him just from 5 or 6 sentences. And so that's what careful description can really do for you, rather than saying, he's a man, he drives a semi, he's been all over the US. Those are very general descriptors that don't help us understand this particular individual any better. But if you pick really careful descriptors, like the way he behaves in parking lots, the way that he focuses on being 50% protected versus 100% vulnerable, the way he quotes Patrick Henry, we're getting a lot of specific details that helps us build a picture of this character who is actually a real person in real life. Moving on to the second paragraph here, Ainsworth wore t-shirts with the truck's picture on them, tall and slim, wearing tinted glasses, whitish hair coming out from under the band of the back of his cap. He had pushed 60 about as far as it would go. Only in one respect was he as well dressed as the truck. His boots, 14 inches high, had been custom made from the tanned hide of a water buffalo by the bootmaker J.B. Hill of El Paso. Hanging in the sleeper behind him as he drove were boot-shaped leader bags containing other boots, like fly rods in burnished tubes. His caiman boots, he wished to point out, were made from the skins of farm-raised caimans. Most people think they're either gator or croc. They're not custom made. They're off the shelf. In his boot library, as he calls it, are mule boots, eel boots, anteater boots, gator boots, crocodile boots. All of these boots are in the third axiom, he says. Why? Because they last forever. His elk and bison low walkers were made by H.S. Trask of Bozeman. Most truck drivers are content with running shoes. Ainsworth is content never to wear them. All right, so we're getting a lot of physical description of Ainsworth in this paragraph. The topic sentence is very short, but indicating that the paragraph will be focused on the way that he is dressed. And you can see that we get descriptors about his t-shirts. He as a person is tall and slim. He wears tinted glasses. He has hair coming out the back of his cap. One of my favorite descriptors of him, he had pushed the age of 60 about as far as it would go, which I feel, if you've noticed that before about people, we age at different rates. That kind of gives you a good idea of what he might look like. The focus on the boots, I think, is a very quirky example of his character, and he doesn't care as much about the rest of the way he looks. As indicated by the topic sentence, he's only as well dressed as the truck with his boots. So he's taking a lot of care with his boots. And we get description of the boots, what they're made of, who made them, which I don't know about you, but I don't know much about any of my clothing other than like super basic name brands of things, if they have a name brand. But we're seeing custom-made boots by professionals in the boot-making field. And his belief that, that they'll last forever. And yeah, it's just showing a lot about him as a character, that this is the lens through which the writer is really viewing this person, this character, and has a lot to take away from just the behavior around the boots, what boots he is choosing to wear and why. And again, that's the example of going into a lot of detail about a defining characteristic of a person. Obviously, this writer, John McPhee, feels that the boots are a very important part of who Ainsworth is, and so he spends 5 or 6 sentences describing them, versus other quick descriptors like he's tall and slim. Well, that doesn't give us very much information about his physical appearance, right? But 6 sentences about boots is a lot of information about boots. So he's telling us a lot about his character by what he's focusing to write about. Alright, so that's a couple example paragraphs from John McPhee. Again, he writes literary nonfiction, so these are real people. We talk about them as characters in writing because, of course, how you describe someone and represent them in writing makes them a character, but they are real people in real life. The next one we have here, this set is from Anne Lamott. She is again, another professional writer, and she has written a book called Bird by Bird, Some Instructions on Writing in Life. And it's a really good book if you're ever needing kind of a pick-me-up or a cheerleading book about writing. She's very encouraging and, gets you motivated to start writing and confident to start writing. And this is from the chapter titled Getting Started. And she's describing what it's like for her to start the writing process, which is, of course, different for every person. But she wants to describe what it feels like to her when she needs to start writing and needs to find confidence in what she is writing. So the first paragraph here, I wish I had a secret I could let you in on. Some formula my father passed on to me in a whisper just before he died. Some code word that has enabled me to sit at my desk and land flights of creative inspiration like an air traffic controller. But I don't. All I know is that the process is pretty much the same for almost everyone I know. The good news is that some days it feels like you just have to keep getting out of your own way so that whatever it is that wants to be written can use you to write it. It is a little like when you have something difficult to discuss with someone, and as you go to do it, you hope and pray that the right words will come up, only if you show up and make a stab at it. And often the right words do come, and you, write for a while. You put a lot of thoughts down on paper. But the bad news is that if you're like me at all, you'll probably read over what you've written and spend the rest of the day obsessing and praying that you do not die, because you can completely rewrite or destroy that you have what you have written, lest the eagerly waiting world learn how bad your first drafts are. All right, so in this paragraph, we're seeing a lot of lack of confidence from a professional writer, which I will say is real, but most writers do not want to talk about it. It's exposing their process and the way they feel about writing in a way most people are not comfortable with. But she's laying it all out there to hopefully motivate and inspire and create confidence in people who are learning to write and practicing writing. So the topic sentence for this paragraph, all I know is that the process is pretty much the same for almost everybody I know. So talking about the general process of writing being the same. Her reaction to it and feeling of it is, of course, different from everybody else. Although she's trying to seek some similarities that she feels it's probably like this for other people and so on. And the topic sentence is, it's the third sentence of this paragraph, which is okay. The topic sentence does not have to be the first sentence. It's just indicating this is what we're focusing on so that the previous sentences make sense and then the following sentences make sense in the context of her controlling idea for the whole paragraph. And then the yellow highlighting here, we have two different colors of highlighting this time. The yellow highlighting is showing her description of the act of writing and the writing process, whereas I highlight in green some metaphor and simile that she uses about what the writing process can feel like or be compared to. So just two different types of description going on here. All right, the next paragraph, you'll notice we do not have a sentence that is indicating it's the topic sentence, the main point for the whole paragraph. However, there is still a sense of what the focus of this paragraph is without a topic sentence. That is called an implied topic sentence, that the paragraph is put together, it's organized, it has paragraph unity and coherence. It just does not have one sentence that you can identify as this is the main point for the whole paragraph. Now, can you do this as a student in academic writing, yes, you can have implied topic sentences. However, it's harder for your reader to figure out what your point is when they have to look at the whole paragraph as a whole and figure out what you're trying to say versus getting the sense of what you're talking about from one sentence. So while people are working on their writing, I always advise to include a clear topic sentence and usually put it toward the beginning of your body paragraph. But yes, this is legal in terms of academic writing. All right, so the obsessing may keep you awake, or the self-loathing may cause you to fall into a narcoleptic coma before dinner. But let's just say that you do fall asleep at a normal hour. Then the odds are that you will wake up at 4 in the morning, having dreamed that you have died. Death turns out to feel much more frantic than you had imagined. Typically, you'll try to comfort yourself by thinking about the day's work, the day's excrumentous work. You may experience a jittery form of existential dread, considering the absolute meaninglessness of life and the fact that no one has ever really loved you. You may find yourself consumed with a free-floating shame and a hopelessness about your work and the realization that you will have to throw out everything that you've done so far and start from scratch. But you will not be able to do so because you suddenly understand that you are completely riddled with cancer. Figurative, not literal. So we have this paragraph here trying to indicate, even though it's in second person saying you feel like this, you're experiencing this, this is her experience, Anne Lamott's experience of what her confidence goes through when she's writing. And she feels not very confident and concerned about what people will be able to see of her unfinished work. All right, the next paragraph here, because we can't end on a very unconfident, sad paragraph. We're gonna end on the pick-me-up paragraph here. And then the miracle happens. The sun comes up again. So you get up and you and do your morning things, and one thing leads to another. And eventually at 9, you find yourself back at the desk, staring blankly at the pages you filled yesterday. And there on page 4, is a paragraph with all sorts of life in it. Smells and sounds and voices and colors and even a moment of dialogue that makes you say to yourself, very, very softly, You look up and stare out the window again, and you don't care about those first 3 pages. Those you will throw out. Those you needed to write to get to that 4th page. To get to that one long paragraph that was what you had in mind when you started. Only you didn't know that you couldn't know that until you got to it. And the story begins to materialize, and another thing is happening, which is that you are learning what you aren't writing. And this is helping you find out what you are writing. Think of a fine painter attempting to capture an inner vision, beginning with one corner of the canvas, painting what he thinks should be there, not quite pulling it off, covering it over with white paint and trying again, each time finding out what his painting isn't, until he finally finds out what it is. All right, so this paragraph, we do have a topic sentence, although it comes toward the end of the paragraph here, that the story begins to materialize, another thing is happening, so on and so on. So basically, she's finding the trust in the process, and it is turning out, the writing is turning out by figuring out what she isn't writing. Slowly, she's learning what she is writing, but again, put in the second person point of view. And you can see a lot of description here about that process. This is happening, this is happening, this is what it feels like. And we have the long metaphor here, extended metaphor, that writing is like painting, which may help some people make a connection with revision, because people think, oh, I should just be able to write something down and it'll be perfect. But in real life, that's not what happens. And when you need to take writing through a full revision process, you do need to trust yourself to slowly find what you're trying to say and make it better till you get to the final draft. And she has included the painting example here so that it might be easier for people to understand with a physical medium that painters paint and repaint and repaint and repaint until they get to their as perfect as possible vision of what they wanted, and that writing is the same way. You write, you cut, you revise, you edit, you cut, you proofread until you get to your final draft, which is not going to be perfect, but you can trust it out in the world. So those are two examples of professional writing that focus primarily on the description mode of writing.